Told y'all to run the whole. I told y'all I'm gonna show y'all how to clean your dirty money up with good money. Invest into yourself. You heard? My partner gave me $50, put me in the game.
This is the I'm Kinda Famous podcast. I'm your host, Lester Rowe. This is day 2 of the Mental Health Awareness Week on the I'm Kinda Famous podcast for Mental Health Awareness Month. iTunes, Google Music, Podbean, SoundCloud, YouTube, Kinda Famous Pod, KINDA Famous Pod. That's where you can go to find everything. On Twitter, Kinda Famous Pod. All right, so plugs not this long. Today, since we're doing 4 back-to-back shows, today is gonna be a lot different than probably every other show I've done. I'm gonna be a little bit more open on this one. Hopefully people aren't sad by the end of this or anything like that. It's just more to create awareness. On this episode, I have a very let me see. I gotta do a proper introduction on this. So she's a filmmaker, artist. I'm gonna say Black intelligentsia.
I wouldn't go that far, Lester.
One of the most inspiring people, inspirational to me at least. Just in the work that she does, in the things that she say, the way she thinks, what she puts out there, everything about what she does is very inspirational to me, and I felt like it would be only right to have her on today's show, and for another very special reason. So her name, good friend of mine. We went to high school together because that good old Booker T done bred some great individuals.
That good old Booker T, though.
Yeah. That's Arts Magnet of Dallas, Texas. Just want to make sure we be more specific because it's 50 states. So we want to make sure we talking about the right one.
Be very clear.
Jatavia Gary, how you doing?
Thank you so much for having me, Lester. I'm doing well. It's good to be in conversation with you.
Yeah, very articulate. Speaks well. You know, that's the type of thing you guys say about Black people. They speak well. So she's made several films, short films. One of my favorites, the first one I actually believe I saw of hers that I think is amazing that everyone should go see, is Cakes the Clown, No Homo. It is Cakes
No. It's Cakes the Killer.
Cakes the Killer.
No homo. Not the clown.
My bad. Cakes the Killer, No Homo. I think it's about a homosexual. Is that the right word? Homosexual.
He's a rapper.
Rapper.
He's a rapper who happens to be homosexual. Yes.
Okay, there we go. That's best. You're right. You know, that's the best way to say he's a rapper that happens to be homosexual. That's right. He's not a homosexual
just like
rapper.
Some rappers are straight. There's some rappers who are gay. There's some rappers who are bi. There's some rappers who are trans. Rap is expansive. Hip hop is expansive.
Now he tells a very, I think, a good story. I don't know. It's a short film, so I don't necessarily want to kind of steal the thunder what he talks about, but I feel like it's. I don't know. I look at it and say, you know what? That's the gay person when I grew up and when I saw gay people in my community. That, other than the ones who wasn't really out there, but that was the flamboyant guy who would be able to stand on his own feet, go toe to toe with anybody, have any conversation, and sometimes it's very funny and entertaining. And even though that you knew that he was gay, you didn't really hold it against him, other than that, you know, the homophobia or natural homophobia people had back in that time, which was a lack of understanding, I believe.
People still have homophobia, which we still have to actively move against. You know, this is a way of fracturing our communities. But I hear what you're saying. Yes, he can hold his own.
Yeah, but gay people, I mean, they were always there. It's just we probably, and hopefully this is kind of tying into what we're doing with mental health awareness. But it was this thing of, I think, the lack of caring or trying to understand and get it, as much as because it was easier to just go in with pitchforks and just say something's wrong with this person for being different.
Yeah, that's definitely it. There's also this kind of legacy of, like, you know, religious fundamentalism that people have had to contend with in the wake of slavery and Jim Crow, and, you know, this kind of, we take on these ways of fracturing our communities and destabilizing our communities by pushing people away based on differences that are rooted in a religious system that's not necessarily ours. It's something that we've taken on and we've Africanized it, and we've used religion to move through these painful periods. But there are some negative aspects of it, and homophobia is one of these negative aspects because it breaks apart families, it fractures individuals, it separates our communities. And whether or not someone is having a homosexual relationship or whether they identify as trans or gay or whatever, that does not keep us from loving them and from welcoming them into our communities and into the families that they were born into, because we need them. We need everybody. So that's, you know,
definitely need everybody.
Really grinds my gears. Yeah.
We need everybody. I mean, we already got a struggling to, like you say, fracture our community is definitely not productive. It creates some internal unnecessary infighting for nothing more than being different.
Yeah, we don't have time for that.
Definitely not right now. She also has another very interesting film. I'm gonna call it Avant-Garde. Shit, I already forgot the name of it.
Which one, the short one?
Yeah, the with that you did on film.
It's called An Ecstatic Experience.
Ecstatic Experience, yeah. I think it's interesting. I like it. Is calling it avant-garde? Is that disrespect? Is that good? Can I say that?
No, I don't. I don't have a problem with it being categorized as avant-garde, though I like to interrogate that label. But yes, for lack of a better phrase, it is considered avant-garde or experimental. The structure of the story is different from a linear, your traditional linear film.
And it was shot, or can you explain that process? I know you did something with film and which is different.
It's an entirely found footage film. So it's a film made of archival footage that I've gathered from different spaces and kind of put them all together. But some of the elements are on 16 millimeter film, which is, of course, this very old format. And I appropriated it. I basically took it and manipulated it by hand and scratching directly onto the celluloid of the film and creating these hand-drawn animations. Or I'm painting on the film. So we see Ruby Dee. We see her basically performing a really this harrowing kind of monologue. And the monologue is based on a slave narrative. And I have basically illustrated around her and on top of her face as she performs this monologue. And so it's a really old technique that I've kind of unearthed and incorporated into my filmmaking practice. So none of the footage that is in the film I actually shot. I basically went around and gathered some seemingly disparate elements, but weave them together around this idea of liberation, of Black people pushing towards some sort of freedom project, whether it's through, open rebellion or whether it's through church and spiritual transcendence or what have you.
I definitely invite people to go watch it. I would say it's on your website, so is that the proper place to send them?
You can watch the entire Cakes to Kill a No Homo on YouTube or Vimeo, and you can see the trailer for An Ecstatic Experience on Vimeo or YouTube. The Ecstatic Experience is playing at festivals still and at museums and galleries, so I haven't released it onto the web as of yet.
Do you know when you will?
No, I'm not sure because I'm not sure exactly when I'll do that because I want to incorporate that film into a larger film. I might use this as my own archival and put it into a larger film. So I'm not really sure. But look out for it. We do screening events all over the country.
Well, like she said, you can go over to you can go to Vimeo. So do you want people to go to your website? Because I'm about to drop the nine.
You can totally go to my website.
It's Jatavia.com. J-A.
You want to give them the spelling?
Yeah,
J-A.
you definitely got to give them the spelling.
Jacovia. V is in Victor, IA.
All right. Now, go there and you can see the trailer for the Ecstatic Experience and links to other shorts that she's made, including Cakes the Killer, The Killer, No Homo. All right. Now, that's Jatavia. But another reason why I felt like it was important for me to do what I'm doing today and have her on is because she actually kind of helped me through this phase. It's the whole reason why I decided I want to do this week and dedicate it to mental health. Oh God. I don't even know how to get through this. All right. So, God. So this
do you want me to start?
Yeah,
or do you want to start?
Yeah, you can start. You can start. I gotta muster up some energy.
And then you can edit this however you want, of course, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm gonna keep it.
Is that what happens?
I'm gonna keep it how it is. I'm not gonna edit it.
I thought people edited podcasts. My bad.
You can. I just with this particular one, I want to keep it authentic as possible. So
okay. Well, I know that you wanted to bring me on to talk about mental health, and that's something that's really important to me because I feel like Black people don't really discuss this very often, and I think it's unfortunate that we don't discuss it very often because, for the most part, we're walking around traumatized. Mm. And oftentimes when you're traumatized traumatizing other people. So, yeah, I'm making this film right now. And you mentioned a film that you're making, too, where you're looking at your relationship. And I've been making this film called The Evidence of Things Not Seen for several years now, maybe like 5. And I've been looking at my closest relationships, my mama, my dad, my brother, my sister, former lovers, my grandparents even, former boyfriends. Just like really having these conversations with people and talking to them about how we interact with each other, our personal history with one another. But then also looking at myself very closely. So the film is thinking about Black relationships, these intimate spaces that Black people have with one another, and how violence, whether it is external violence, historical violence, or kind of intergenerational trauma, how it affects our spaces of love, our spaces of intimacy and care. And so mental illness neurodivergence, as I've kind of come to call it, takes center stage sometimes in this film because I am often depressed. You know, this is something that I wanted to think about and talk about openly in the film. Not only am I depressed often, these kind of stages of intense, you know, melancholia where I don't really want to do anything, or, you know, I'm listless and restless. I might even have a physical pain. This, you know, these feelings of like worthlessness, isolation and alienation, this intense and overwhelming sadness. It's really a problem, I think, for a lot of, not just people my age and not just Black folks, but for a lot of people, and particularly in this current reality that we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
If it's not depression, it's anxiety or post-traumatic stress or borderline personality disorder or schizophrenia, bipolar. These are real problems for us. And I just would hope that we can open up some space to discuss them.
Did you, and you talked about being depressed and this journey you're going through with your relationships with your past and present. Have you discussed like depression with your family, your immediate family, your mom, your dad?
Yes, I have.
How was that?
I have. I mean, it's a mixed bag. There are moments of frustration, and then there are moments of breakthrough where I feel like we're understanding one another. But there is a disconnect, you know, and I feel like a lot of that disconnect is generational. And, you know, my family, I come from a very religious family, like many people from where we're from.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, extremely religious, like generations of preachers. Yeah. And they look at this sort of thing differently. They see it through a different lens. And I can appreciate their lens. But I think that we can sometimes see things through various lenses so that we can get a clearer understanding of it. I feel like often their lens is rooted in kind of traditional, very conservative and spiritual lens, this way that they view it. And I don't think that that's all the way bad, right? Because I think there is a spiritual component to what ails us and how it manifests.
Now, I don't want to veer too far into or far at all. Just scratch the surface here into politics a little bit. I always I've had this conversation with people where, you know, Black people get labeled, you know, Democrat, and a lot of times we do take on that Democrat party title. But I personally feel like when they talk about independent, I think we take Democrat because it sounds beneficial and seems beneficial to us. But I think we think a lot more, or traditionally think a lot more Republican or conservative. We hold, you know, there is that the as we talked about earlier, the homosexual thing or homophobic thing that we tend to carry as a culture. There is the religious aspect that we carry as a culture that we adopted and really hold on to very strongly. But then there's the whole progressive part of, like, you know, we want equality. We want to be able to work. We want to be able to have the same, you know, all that stuff. And I think between, you know, where you talk about, you know, it's been kind of hard to have these conversations because of these ideals that we hold on to. It really is like that thing where, you know, you could find a conservative white family who has a kid that's gay, that's afraid to come out or speak to them because of what they know their family to be. To say these inflammatory statements casually between friends at the dinner table when almost Black culture, almost mirrors that same sort of I hate to say tradition, but or conversation for the most part.
I hear what you're saying, and I think in some aspects I agree, but I want to caution us against this notion that Black people are in some ways more homophobic, that Black culture is in many ways more homophobic, because I'm not so sure about that. I think that overall we live in a homophobic space. We live in a homophobic society. We live in a patriarchal society which pushes forth homophobia.
Yeah, I'm personally not a fan of the word homophobia personally, but that's just me.
Okay, well,
I just use it because I think people understand that better.
Yeah, there's an antagonism, right, against people who are gay. There's an antagonism against people who identify as trans or bi, or who are living in what dominant culture feels like is a negative manifestation of their sexuality or their gender. And that's a problem. And I think that's worldwide. But I do think that Black people, yes, in many instances have adopted this stance. But I don't think that is original to us. I don't think that is something that we were doing way, way back when we were on the mother continent, right? I don't think we were being homophobic. In fact, there are many forms of gender expression. There are many forms of one's sexuality being expressed outside of this quote-unquote normative state. That was happening within ancient African culture. So, yes, and within this iteration of Blackness, in this contemporary moment, yes, we are homophobic as well. But I don't know if that's indicative of who we are, basically. So that's what I think we should really kind of continue to push against that. But your larger question, can you remind me of what it was?
I think that was just more of a statement. Now, my larger, and like I said, I was just scratching the surface on the political stuff. But so we're gonna get all the way the fuck up out of that. And the question I have actually goes back to butting heads with the family on depression. What was that first conversation like, or how did it go?
I don't even remember the first conversations because, me coming into consciousness around my neuro waywardness or my neurodivergence, this kind of special touch I have from the universe. That's not how I like to see it. I don't really like to see it as this kind of this terrible affliction. It's in many ways it's a gift. It's just kind of heightened sensitivity. I feel very, very deeply about things. Whether that's good or bad. It's really just about learning how to control it. And so it's been years of me having to kind of come into this consciousness of learning who I am and these various shifts in mood. And so I can't necessarily pinpoint the one conversation that I've had. I've said things about how I feel and what I was going through since I was very young. I was really vocal. And I also went through periods of very erratic behavior as an adolescent, which looking back makes perfect sense because that's usually when things are starting to manifest themselves, right? If you have some form of neurodivergence, whether you are depressed or whether you are bipolar, whatever it is, this can begin to manifest itself during your adolescent years, really extreme. But I didn't really, they just, for the most part, they're supportive and they say, okay, we love you. And, but they always just want to pray for me. And I accept prayer because I think prayer is a powerful force. I think it's basically you focusing your attention on something, you focusing your thoughts on something. And that's really powerful. So I accept that. I think that's a positive and powerful thing. But I've had to go outside of my family for a certain type of support because they're not interested in things like therapy or necessarily talking things through all the time. Sometimes they are.
Why do you think that people tend to, why is the conversation easier with people outside of the family than inside when, we constantly feel like, if I don't have anybody, I got my family. Like we got this. We we survive ourselves through our family, but when it comes to that serious, introspective conversation, it's harder to have or even begin to have with family than it is.
Well, because family isn't quote unquote objective, right? Family has, they've known you. They have their ideas and their issues on who you are and what happened. You know, they have their sides of the story. And their connections to other family members is difficult, right? Because it's a tangled web, you know? Whereas a third party that's removed from all of that, they may be able to reach some sort of quote unquote objective stance, right? Where they're not leaning towards one party or the other. They don't have a horse in this race.
Right.
But also, it's difficult to talk to family sometimes because family might be the person, you know, who originated whatever the trauma was.
Yeah.
That led to whatever you're feeling, or that, you know, because oftentimes that's the thing. People think that, you know, these sorts of mental illnesses are purely biological, and they're not. Sometimes they're a response to intense childhood trauma or intense trauma from any period of your life. It's basically a response to immiseration sometimes. Not all the time, but often. So sometimes when you're dealing with these things, it's happened, you know, because of something that has gone on, you know, in the family or as a child or whatever. And it's hard for us to face that. There's a stigma around that. So there's not just the stigma of being quote unquote crazy. There's also the stigma that lies at the root of the quote unquote craziness. You know, whatever that initial wound was.
So you mentioned stigma, and I was actually going to where would, if we have this openness to others who don't have a dog in the race, then why do we still have this stigma that goes with it? Like we don't talk to the family, and then we may, I'm gonna say, scratch the surface with strangers, but not necessarily open up all the way because of I assume a judgment. So where does the stigma really come from if we all understand that we are not, most people, regardless of mental illness or mental health, most people will probably say people think they know me but don't really know me. But yet we all try to hide the person that we really are, I think. So where is that stigma coming from if we all universally tend to think the same idea that we're not exactly the person that everyone sees?
I mean, even though I don't know if these are universal thoughts, some people are really out here thinking that they're being authentic.
That's true.
And we know how difficult that is. You know, that's very difficult to be authentic 100% of the time. And, you know, we in fact, we live in an inauthentic society. So I feel like, you know, the stigma is often coming from society. Society, especially American society, is mostly smoke and mirrors. This kind of Western illusion of exceptionalism and beauty or luxury. Don't even get me started on social media, right? How we can kind of craft this alternate self that is always amazing and successful and beautiful, and the lighting on the selfie is amazing, and I'm at this amazing location where I've checked in so you can see it. You know, it's all this kind of self-making that's happening, but it's unrooted. You know, it doesn't have any roots or any true or authentic roots often, because we're looking towards this outward validation. So I think stigma is coming from the society. You're supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to be healthy and good. But the thing, some aspects of social media is that the young folks, they're having these conversations.
Yeah.
A lot more than what I've seen even people in our age group doing. They're talking very openly and candidly about their symptoms, whether they are feeling disassociated or, anxiety ridden, or whether they are, anything that's happening to them that's related to their psychological or emotional state, they're more interested in discussing it. And that's not across the board, of course. There are some folks who are still not having these conversations. But I'm seeing the ice thaw around it a little bit more. And I'm hopeful about that, Vesta, because I think that for Black people to really begin to think about how we're going to get ourselves out of this situation, we need to turn towards the interior. I feel like we centralize white supremacy and whiteness and what white folks are doing quite often. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't think about that, because they're raining hell down upon us and it's going to get worse. But I think the way out of this is to think about how we're interacting with one another. What can we do with one another? What can we say to one another? How can we work and build with one another, including rooting out all of the bullshit, like the homophobia, like the patriarchy, like the violence in between us, right? This kind of intimate violence that we're interacting, that we're visiting upon each other. How can we remove white folks from the center of the conversation and think about our relationship, our plan, our strategies? I think that's important. And I think talking about what's happening in our mental minds is at the top of this list.
So, since I feel like I just got the pep talk from Africana.
I hate you.
So
you tried it.
on the level of stigma, having the conversation. One, I guess, and it's probably going to happen through here. I've never had this conversation with my family, of only a handful of friends, and I'm pretty open with this conversation when it's had in private. But now I'm gonna have it in public. So personally, I struggle with depression, and it's been a tough road up to this point. And dealing with it, I can't say, if there was a trauma that led to it. I know today, with a mature mind, I can look back at how I was as a child and go, that was it. Those were those moments that I was having, these spells in my life as a kid, when these different things was happening, when everyone would go, he's so quiet and this thing. Like, now I know that's what that was. I had a battle with addiction for I don't know how many years, because I don't count. That eventually that started with when my kids left, and their mom left, or my daughter at the time left, here to move to Texas. And I remember I couldn't sleep. Not immediately. Yeah, those first several days was tough. It's supposed to suck. Your kids leave. But several I can't remember when, but it came to a point where I just couldn't sleep. I would wake up, and if I did fall asleep, I'd wake back up. I had this intense obsession with work, not work or being creative. So making music, that's all I wanted to do. It was all about making it. And I couldn't sleep, and and there was something else that was going on that I can't remember right now. But I remember going to the doctor, and he prescribed me God, I can't remember. Zoloft. That's what it was. He prescribed me Zoloft at the time. And I was taking it because I listened to my doctor. We didn't really have a major conversation about it, or maybe we did and I half listened. Because I was also taking different muscle relaxers and not narcotics, but I guess it was narcotics as well. Because I was just always in pain. I just was in pain all the time, and eventually I was addicted to the pain muscle relaxers and painkillers I was taking, which that's what they do. It's just Loratab, Vicodin. That's what they do. They're set up almost in a way to make you addicted to it. But I was addicted to it, and I knew at some point that I had to be manipulating my doctor to get more. But he was also prescribing to help with sleep, Ambien. He was giving me Zoloft. We took um, some other shit as well. Rimron, I believe it was. And I remember one conversation we had when he was giving me another round of Zoloft. He was saying, you know, you want to be careful with this because when I prescribe this to kids or teens, they think that I have a problem. They go one or two ways. They think that they think and feel that they have a problem. This pill is gonna do everything. I'm gonna be Superman. I can do whatever I want, and then they die. Or they start to think that, oh, I'm sick. I got to take pills. Why am I so fucked up? And they end up killing themselves. They die. So he was saying, you just want to be careful of that. You know, this is the help, but this isn't fixing anything. And I really was like, I was really like, all right, I guess, man, you know, I was already taking pills. Just give me some more shit to take. And then he mentioned because I was always coming at the same, it was always getting real bad at the same part of the year that I had seasonal depression. Because it was always around the holidays. I'm here in the city by myself, and it was around Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I didn't always go down to see my family because it was just hard to leave. And so that's when I really was like, yo, I mean, there may be something to what he's saying. And that's kind of a point where I was like, all right, I ended up binging. I took a lot of shit at once because I felt bad. And I remember the thing that made me quit taking muscle relaxers and shit like that was I slept one day for like maybe 13 to 14 hours. And I remember I woke up and I picked up my phone. I didn't have a missed call. No one was reaching out to me. And I was like, yo, my biggest fear is being found dead. And I was thinking like I could be in there dead for days, possibly. And because people knew that I have this thing where I don't want to be bothered because I'm creating, I'm being a mastermind or whatever, they would just let me be. Oh, he must be going through one of his moments. And that was the moment I quit, you know, muscle relaxers and prescription pain pills, and really wanted to take some sort of responsibility for the mental health problem. And for the most part, I was doing well. And I started to look back on my life and like, what did everything mean throughout all this? And I was doing well. I did really well. I had these moments from time to time, but I learned to deal with them instead of supplementing it with some sort of pill. After at some point Zoloft became something that they said, hey, maybe we shouldn't be giving people this. And so now that's not a thing, but I took plenty of them. And there was a moment I had some bad spells from time to time where I felt like shit. I didn't feel like I was a great creator. I would make stuff and think it was awful. I'd tear up a bunch of shit, break things because I just wasn't happy. And then I think 3 years ago, I started really going. No, 3 years ago, there was a holiday. The Christmas holiday fell perfect enough that I could see my family and see my kids. And so I went down to Dallas, and I had a childhood moment again where I used to go see my mom's family, then go over to see my dad's family, and it was just kind of I lived 2 Christmases, but it didn't feel that way. It felt great because I had a big family, and I was able to do that again. And then top it all off, go down and see my kids. So I got to see my whole family. It was like the best feeling. And I said, I'm gonna do this every year because it's gonna keep me from thinking the bad thoughts. And it worked for a long while. And then because I made this post on March 10th on my Facebook, I know exactly when this moment was. And on March 10th on my Facebook, I made this statement saying, I'm pretty sure I'm dealing with an anxiety attack. I have never dealt with this at this level of sadness, anger, and frustration all at once. I cannot think nor react properly. It's so much at once. The only reason I'm posting this is because I can feel myself bottling everything up and going into a dark place. I'm not thinking straight. It's such a broken feeling. And no, I'm not doing this for attention. And I posted that because I was going through a very bad family problem with my kids. Nothing like taking my kids away, nothing like that. It was just an irrational thought behind what was happening. And I fell apart. The worst I've ever fell apart. And it's something so small, like something over a small amount of money that I could do, but I said no. And I felt bad about saying no. And then all of a sudden, it's like everything just fell apart. And I sat there and really contemplated killing myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there looking at all the stuff that I got posters of, like films I've made, awards I won, selections I got, great things that I'm like looking forward to doing. And it didn't matter. And
yeah.
And my phone starts ringing because I don't post shit like that. So my phone started ringing, and I'm getting upset. Like, now these people want to reach out to me. Now people want to talk. And I turned everything off. And then I was about to turn off the computer, my laptop. And then you sent something. And I can't remember. I don't know why I looked, because I wasn't looking at anything. I was trying to ignore everybody. But for some reason I looked. And I mean, in retrospect, now I think I looked because the level of respect I have for you and the work that you do, and just the way that you think. And I felt like, I think of all these people, she's gonna understand. She understood what I put there. And reading what you sent me, it was just like, yes, like all of this. And like, you were the only person I talked to, like that whole night. I was just like back and forth thinking about, like, what am I doing? Why am I even thinking this way? And then I go from like coming out of it to like going further down, and to like, no, because you're not, what are you even doing all this for? Why are you even making shit? Like, no one gives a fuck. Even though I'm looking at successes that I've had in everything that I've ever done, I work my ass off to be the smartest person making this thing, or at least attempting to, not half-assing. And it was like, why? What for what? Because in the end of the day, you don't have the relationships you want to have. You're not where the receipt for the work doesn't measure up to the work, you do, the energy you put into it. And you can't even really express yourself to people how you feel. And but the conversation that me and you were having was like, no, that's not true. Like, you're not the only person that deals with it like this.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you're talking about this because I think that you're articulating it really powerfully, and that, of course, people need to hear it. And when people hear stuff like this, just like you did on that day, they can understand that they're not this lone figure suffering, in the wilderness by themselves, even if it feels like that at that moment. And I think that's super important, like getting people back to a stabilizing state when they're feeling not so stabilized, right? So everything that you're saying, it of course resonates with me, and that's why I reached out that day, and I'm glad that I did, because I've definitely felt that. I've definitely thought about, I've had suicidal ideation. I've thought about ending my own life before. I've made gestures and attempts at ending my own life before. I have been so low where I thought that I was the only person, who could ever understand this, and that no one cares, or that I would die penniless in an unmarked grave. And that's one of my fears. This happened to Zora Neale Hurston, who is arguably a genius, one of the greatest writer of the 20th century, an anthropologist. She made films. She was just an amazing Black woman who did amazing work. And she died alone and in an unmarked grave. And Alice Walker had to go and find that grave years later and put a headstone there and basically take care of her, like this idea of care around Black people in their lives is important to me, even if it's difficult for me to extend that care to myself sometimes. But it's an active practice. And so that's what I was hoping to extend to you on that day, because people have been very helpful to me when I have felt, the way that you were feeling that day.
And and the weird thing about it, like I said, I'm in a personal conversation. I'm open about suffering with depression because I don't necessarily want to hide it. But probably the toughest thing about this now is I'm gonna invite my family to listen to this episode. I know I am. And they're probably not going to. I don't know what the response is going to be, and I'm not even sure that I'm ready to have the conversation with my mom or my sister or anybody in my family. I guess because and they're open. They've never pushed me into not having saying what I want to say. Any idea like this idea of being a filmmaker or music, like no, they never like shunned me away from anything. It just seems like a hard conversation to have because I don't know the response.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know, because I feel positive about it. It's just I don't know, and
right.
And this whole, like, it sucks. like I don't it sucks a lot, because I don't feel like I have healthy relationships with like anybody.
Mm.
I have good relationships. I know a lot of people look at me as a great friend, but the like it's hard to, like, it's when I talk to people about depression and it's like, and they're like, maybe you just should do this and you should go here, maybe this would be fun. It's like I can go do all that and smile and joke and hide all this from you, and you would never know the difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'll go home and just really like like, and really hate myself and hate you for making me do this and hate everybody.
It's draining. It's draining. Absolutely.
And I wish I could say, okay, go see a doctor, go do like, and then as I tell this story of not taking pills and my way of dealing with up until this point, I plan to change how I have been dealing with it, and take a more responsible approach. Really give the idea of being with a therapist a real run. Because the first time that I did it, it was more so about manipulation. Getting them to say what I wanted them to say so I can feel how I wanted to feel. But I don't know the right way to go. My way of dealing with it is hiding from everyone and just working my ass off. Reading a book, a self-help book, basically. It tells me that I'm a genius, that the way that I think isn't some weird shit that you think higher and better than other people. Self-affirmation. So I can't tell people where to go.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to prescribe anything for other individuals as well. You know, because with different folks, different methods for care are more effective. Like, for example, you mentioned pills, and I have never taken any sort of pill, a mood regulator, or stabilizer. I'm very, very scared of those. And I'm also kind of like a health freak, like a health nut. So my way of kind of healing myself, right, or alleviating symptoms is almost a holistic approach. It's kind of, via food, via certain, cleansing methodologies. It's different for different people. Some people are interested in therapy and some people are not. Some people find assistance with meditation. They find some relief in meditation, which is this mindful practice that slows down, our awareness and gets us to focus on breath. It's really ancient practice. Some people find the type of solace and care that they need from their spiritual tradition. But I hear you because I'm with you as well. Usually when things are really bad, I'm isolating from people. I can go 4 or 5 days locked in my apartment, focusing on work only. And that's if I'm good. If I'm really, really bad, then I'm not getting out of the bed for days on end. I can be completely wiped out. So, but there are these methods. There are these tools that I grab once I figure out what's happening, and those tools kind of help me pull myself out of the pit. Whether that's reaching out to 2 of my close friends who I can speak very candidly about what I'm feeling, and they can offer some sort of care or some words of comfort or some reminders of what I can do to bring myself out of this space, and that's usually the primary tool, right? Reaching out to people. But for example, right now I'm not in therapy. I took a moment hiatus because I was in therapy for a while. I want to say 3 years ongoing, and it's a difficult process because it's really work. It demands your presence and your active participation, your active observation.
Yeah.
You have to be open to doing that. And most people aren't. They don't want to talk about shit. They don't want to talk about how they feel. They don't want to talk about their families. They don't want to.
I think a lot of them don't want to be honest either.
It's hard to do that, Lester. It's very difficult to do that,
Yeah.
So I get it. I understand.
What?
But it's helpful. It's been effective for me, I'll say. It may not be effective for everybody, and there are problems with the history of psychotherapy, talk therapy. psychology, period. You know, it's some Western, white, European invention. So there are ways to trouble this entire structure. But finding you a therapist or a counselor that is culturally competent, like if you're Black or if you're queer or gay or if you would prefer a woman, you know, like you have to really go out and figure this out. You can't just enter into a relationship with the first person that comes around. It's like dating almost, you know. You have to see, are we going to be comfortable with one another? Will I be able to talk to you? Will you be able to call me out on my shit? Or can I easily manipulate you? Because I've definitely manipulated a few therapists and didn't get nothing out of it. Wasted money and wasted time.
I would probably echo at least that part. Is in the end of the day, if you're paying them and you're lying to them, you're burning money.
100%. Why even do it?
What do you think people who don't suffer from, you know, these sort of problems, what do you think they need to know? Or what do you think they need to know? How should they deal with, you know, these friends?
That's really interesting because, you know, I was going to say I don't know anyone not suffering from these, but I don't want to be too sweeping in my generalizations. But I do think I think most people who think that they're fine are not. And if they spend a little time with themselves, a little quiet time with themselves, and they would figure out that maybe they too have some work to do. I think it's interesting that we're having this conversation because awareness is key, right? This raising of consciousness, this acquiring of knowledge, this acquiring of understanding around this topic and the various iterations of neurodivergence, understanding that bipolar is not schizophrenia necessarily, and that borderline personality disorder has different symptoms from, you know, any other form of psychological ailment. I think raising our understanding around these problems, whether it's historically or their contemporary iterations, is the first step. Figuring out what this actually is, so that we can kind of remove this veil and this cloak around it. You know, when people act or behave erratically, or you know, they have some sort of psychotic break or they kill themselves, we have a certain type of reaction, and it's not necessarily effective all the time. You know, we mourn them and we say, oh, that's terrible. We might have a few conversations about it, and then we keep it pumping. But I think we need to excavate what's at the root of a lot of our emotional and psychological problems. So thinking about our own personal relationships, I don't think just people like me and you who have depression and anxiety should be the only people thinking about our intimate relationships with our families and loved ones. How do we respond to folks? Are we dominating people? Are we reproducing the violence that we deal with in our larger society? Are we reproducing that in our family? Are we brutalizing each other? Are we being violent towards each other? Like thinking very clearly about ways that we can change the rules of engagement between Black folks and opening up these conversations.
You mentioning the violence and things like that. That's one thing that, you know, well, I'm gonna sew two things together, but you also said earlier about, you know, finding that therapist who is culturally aware. I can't remember exact phrasing you used, but, you know, finding that kind of therapist who's aware enough in, you know, let's just say minorities, whatever your minority is. And then also when we come over here and talk about the violence and how kids or our people act towards each other, a lot of the times I kind of feel like I hate to say that it's mental illness or something like that, but I feel like some of it is a call out because they don't know how to deal with themselves. They don't understand themselves, and they're just looking for a way to a outlet for that feeling. And sometimes it's violence. It's I mean, like I said, I can go back to my childhood. I was I had an anger problem a lot. Not at home because um I hate to say, but I felt like there was a lot of anger in the, you know what, fuck it. There was anger in the house. It wasn't until sometime in high school, late in high school, that my mom sat me down. My sister was already gone, I think. But my mom sat me down and was explaining